You're a rich girl whose bag was stolen and she was flirted with by a tomboyish roommate, yet you actively seduce the unattainable man she secretly loves. Even your childhood sweetheart cooperates with you, acting out, feeding you in public, and even getting lip and tongue piercings to change yourself for revenge. However, it turns out this was all a carefully planned deception by him, and I only realized I was the one being played at our engagement. To get revenge on the tomboyish roommate, I actively sought out the male god she had admired for a long time, Luke Dawson, the unattainable man in the department, notoriously hard to get. In the corner of the classroom, Luke still had my lipstick marks on his lips, and the top button of his shirt had been torn off by me. Luke finally couldn't help but hug me. He lowered his eyes, his voice hoarse. "Jennifer Delaney, this is my first relationship. Don't lie to me. There was a T-girl in the dorm. After she found out my best friend's boyfriend was a rich second generation, she secretly added his contact information. In the middle of the night, my best friend caught them flirting." Jessica Miller explained with a smirk. "Don't overthink it. We're just like brothers." My best friend scoffed, furious. She pointed at the chat interface and read out each word. "Brother, look below. You two brothers are talking about this, huh?" Jessica shrugged. "This is how I talk to guys. They don't see me as a woman anyway, so whose fault is it if you think that?" I calmed down my best friend, who was about to explode. "Calm down. Don't bother with people like that." Then, as soon as I turned around, I saw the Gucci bag my dad had just given me, hanging on Jessica's chair. Yesterday, because I had class, I just unwrapped it and put it on the table. Then it was gone in the afternoon. Apparently, Jessica had quietly taken it and secretly carried it out. The key was that there was a slight scratch and some oil stains on the white leather of the bag. Jessica noticed my gaze, and holding my bag, she said naturally, "Jennifer, why do you always leave your things lying around?" "Here, take it back. Don't leave it with me next time." I was so angry I laughed. Okay, I leave my things lying around. You like to play that brotherhood game, huh?" I opened my phone and went straight to Luke's chat interface in my contact list. This time, my best friend next to me comforted me. "Calm down, Jennifer. Don't do anything stupid." My chat interface with Luke was still stuck on a few days ago. It was a message he sent me. "Auntie told me to supervise your studies properly. The final exams are coming up soon, so you and Kristen should go out drinking less." Luke, the male god Jessica had a crush on for a long time. The unattainable star of the economics department, notoriously hard to get. He was also my childhood friend, who grew up playing with Kristen and me. It's just that he's always been conventional, rigid, and boring, and never really got along with us since childhood. I remember the first time I rebelled and had an early romance in high school. Because my parents had entrusted Luke to take good care of me at school, Luke insisted on skipping class to go to the arcade with me and my boyfriend. At the time, I was a bit annoyed and said directly to Luke, "Are you going to watch us kiss too?" Luke was stunned for a moment. Actually, I just spoke too quickly. I hadn't really done anything beyond holding hands with anyone, mainly because I really couldn't bring myself to kiss. After all, early romances back then were just about getting together casually if you liked each other. Luke lowered his eyes and didn't look at me, only saying in a faint voice, "Then I'll wait for you outside. Be careful." I have to say, Luke really did have an exceptionally handsome face. His cool, clear features were like ice-carved jade, and his long eyelashes drooped, obscuring his light-colored pupils. It inexplicably made me feel a trace of pity and guilt. Then Luke sat outside until dark. After I went to college, we contacted each other even less. Besides, when our parents had something to do, we basically didn't communicate much. When I called Luke, he answered quickly. Before Luke could speak, I said directly, "Luke, are you free on Saturday? Want to come out for a meal?" Jessica, sitting at the table opposite, had already looked over at me when I called out Luke's name. Luke on the phone seemed to be stunned. I usually don't even send messages to Luke, let alone ask him out for dinner alone. Luke paused for a moment before responding. Okay. After I hung up the phone, Jessica looked straight at me. You know Luke? I raised an eyebrow. Of course, we're childhood sweethearts. Jessica visibly became unhappy. On Saturday, Jessica insisted on sticking with me and my best friend to go have dinner with Luke. At the dinner table, Jessica naturally sat next to me. She smiled and greeted Luke, who was already waiting at his seat across from us. She didn't call him senior like everyone else. She called him, "Hello, Brother Luke." This immediately made my best friend and me, who were sitting next to her, choke. Then Jessica brushed her hair back and added with a smile, I'm used to hanging out with guys. We usually treat each other like brothers. You don't mind, do you, Luke? Luke didn't react much. He just gave Jessica a faint nod as a polite response. I suddenly let out a soft cough. When Luke turned to look at me, he was about to speak, but then his voice caught. He seemed completely stunned. A rare moment of blankness appeared on his usually placid face. I was wearing shorts today. I smiled at Luke, slowly rubbing my calf against the inside of his leg, feeling his body stiffen, and slowly said, Brother Luke? Jessica, who had just bent down to pick up chopsticks from under the table, happened to witness this scene. The chopsticks Jessica had just picked up fell to the floor again. The atmosphere was a little too strange. Jessica also inexplicably quieted down, looking down at the table, lost in thought. My best friend, Kristen, who had just finished ordering, looked up at us in confusion. Why aren't you all eating? What are you staring at? Upon hearing this, Jessica quickly put a piece of food into Luke's bowl. She patted Luke's shoulder familiarly and said, Luke, don't be shy. Jennifer and I are good friends, and since you're Jennifer's childhood sweetheart, you're my childhood sweetheart too, so I'll get you some food. Kristen gave her a speechless look. She was about to turn to me to complain. I saw myself extending my chopsticks towards Luke, and with a sweet smile, I said, That's right, Brother Luke. Don't be shy. Open your mouth. I'll pick some food and feed you. Cough, 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 cough. Kristen almost choked on the food in her mouth. After coughing violently for a few seconds, she composed herself, pulled out a tissue to wipe her mouth, and looked at Luke and me in disbelief. I pretended not to see my best friend, and took the opportunity to reach out and gently hook Luke's finger with my pinky, as if urging him to act quickly. Luke's eyelashes trembled almost imperceptibly. He pursed his lips, averted his gaze from me, and the skin on the finger I touched instantly tensed. His earlobes seemed to be burning red, making him feel as if he were being fried in boiling oil. Kristen, beside us, had been so shocked that she fell completely silent for a long time. Finally, she couldn't help but speak. No, you two. Behind my back. I quickly covered Kristen's mouth to prevent her from saying anything that would ruin the atmosphere. Jessica glared at me, then deliberately interjected, feigning thoughtfulness. Jennifer, don't force Brother Luke. Can't you see he's unwilling? Even if you two are childhood sweethearts, you can't disregard Brother Luke's feelings. The repeated calls of Brother Luke almost made me lose my composure. I secretly shot Luke a look, asking him to play along. After all, ever since I'd known Luke since childhood, I knew he was meticulously clean to an infuriating degree. He was always unwilling to have physical contact with others, and even carried hand sanitizer in his bag whenever he went out, let alone eating food picked up by someone else's chopsticks. My original intention was just to have Luke put on a show, to get back at Jessica and make her unhappy. Who would have thought that the next second Luke actually opened his mouth? The expression on his face was still cold and unruffled, but his Adam's apple subtly bobbed as he stared at my hand holding the chopsticks, then quickly lowered his head and bit the food I had picked for him off my chopsticks. Then his voice was a little hoarse. I'm not unwilling. Kristen's expression completely shattered. Her face practically screamed. The three of us grew up together, wearing the same pair of pants. When did you two get together behind my back? Jessica, on the other hand, turned pale, as if she had never been so ignored in front of other boys. I looked at Luke with great admiration. I didn't expect the seemingly dull Luke to be so good at playing along. The meal was completely ruined. Jessica said she had something to do and left early. As soon as she was gone, Kristen completely exploded. "No! What's going on with you two?" The three of us grew up together, wearing the same pair of pants. "How come you two are flirting in front of me? Tell me, when did you two get together?" Luke was already a man of few words, and now he didn't answer, just looked straight at me. I watched Jessica's angry departure, and with a rather pleasant mood, I comforted my best friend. "Don't be so loud. There's nothing between Luke and me. I was just putting on a show to get back at Jessica. She ruined my bag and flirted with your boyfriend, so I deliberately seduced the person she liked right in front of her to get revenge. I just didn't expect Luke to cooperate with me so well." Luke's expression froze. He subtly moved his fingers. The spot on his skin that had just touched mine, feeling as if it had been scorched by fire, instantly cooled. Wiping his mouth with a tissue, Luke stood up and said indifferently, "Then I'll head back to class." Before leaving, he didn't tell anyone at the table that he had skipped an entire professional class for the first time for this meal today. After returning to the dorm, Jessica deliberately gave my best friend and me the cold shoulder for several days. She also stopped asking Kristen and me to borrow skincare products or clothes, treating us as if we were invisible. At noon, when Jessica was on a video call with Tony, the rich second-generation boyfriend my best friend had just broken up with, she deliberately put it on speaker, and their conversation was quite explicit. "Brother Tony, you're in a bad mood after your breakup. I'll come find you in a few days. I'll wear your favorite black stockings to drink with you." "A gift? Why would I bring a gift when I come to see you? We're good buddies. It's too formal to bring a gift just to drink with you." "You say I can't outdrink you? How is that possible? If I can't outdrink you, then how about I give you my worn stockings?" Kristen leaned against my bed, looking a bit bored, listening to their conversation, and objectively commented, "These two are really something." Kristen broke up with her ex-boyfriend decisively after finding out he was flirting with Jessica. Aside from the initial anger of being cuckolded, she was completely over the breakup in less than 2 days. Tony was indeed a rich second generation, but he was miles behind Kristen's family. For Kristen and me, we never lacked dating partners. After all, our families are loaded, we carry designer bags when we go out, wear niche luxury brands with prominent logos, and have dedicated makeup artists. We lack nothing, especially not admirers. Kristen, watching me put on makeup, asked curiously, "Are you going out?" I only turned to answer after matching my bag. "That junior from the media department asked me out for lunch." Kristen's interest was piqued by the gossip. "Tsk tsk. This is your first time agreeing to have lunch alone with a guy, right? The one with the lip piercing? He looks both innocent and wild, which really fits your strange aesthetic. By the way, Luke is much better looking than him. Do you really have no feelings for him?" I shrugged. I don't like his type. He's too boring and lacks novelty, very uninteresting. With that, I left the dorm. I didn't notice the curtain on Jessica's bed, which had been drawn at some point. She had quietly hung up her video call with Tony as soon as she heard Kristen and me talking. At that moment, she used student council matters as an excuse to call Luke, deliberately letting him hear everything Kristen and I said about him, including the last sentence, "Too boring, no novelty, very uninteresting." After a long time, I finally heard Luke's response from the other end of the call again. His voice was inexplicably low. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up now." I was completely stunned when I unexpectedly ran into Luke while having dinner with Jason off campus. Jason, a junior from the communications department. He dressed in a rather rebellious and wild way, with a silver lip ring and a flamboyant tattoo on his collarbone. But in reality, Jason is more of the puppy type. The kind of puppy with a wild personality. Last week, He proactively added my contact information during a public elective class, and today he asked me out for dinner. Jason is quite good at flirting. He saw that I was interested in his lip ring, so he leaned in and said with a smile, "Sis, touch it gently. It hurts." The atmosphere became a bit ambiguous. Just as I was about to reach out, I suddenly felt the chair next to me sink. Luke, who should have been in the lab and library at this time, suddenly appeared and sat in the seat next to me. Then he naturally pulled out several professional textbooks from his tote bag. He placed one of the advanced math textbooks in front of me, propping it up to block Jason's leaning face. Luke's voice still showed no emotional fluctuations. He just looked at me and said, "You have an advanced math class this afternoon. It's better to preview it beforehand during lunch." Jason frowned and asked me, "Who is he?" Luke looked up, his gaze coldly sweeping over Jason's face, as if ignoring his presence, then turned to me and said seriously, "Last semester, you just barely passed calculus. This semester, exams are coming up soon. If you don't work hard and just focus on playing, you'll fail." I was silent for a moment. I felt that such words didn't necessarily have to be said while I was on a date. Seeing Jason's displeased face opposite me, to avoid him misunderstanding, I explained to him, "This is my friend. He usually doesn't care about anything else besides studying. He's never had a girlfriend since he was little. Occasionally, my parents ask him to supervise my studies. Don't overthink it." Before I could finish, Luke, who was beside me, suddenly frowned. As if he couldn't listen anymore, he reached out and pressed his fingertip against my lips, then slowly slid it to the corner of my mouth. My words stopped, and I stared wide-eyed in a daze. He said faintly, "You didn't wipe this clean. There's a grain of rice." Jason sneered at me. "Aren't you two messing with me, sis? Am I part of your game?" I watched his angry, retreating figure in silence for a moment. I turned to Luke, the culprit, and said irritably, "What exactly did you come to find me for?" Luke didn't answer. At this moment, he was quietly looking down at the open calculus textbook, his lowered eyelashes making him look like a cold jade sculpture, impeccably handsome to an infuriating degree. I said with a headache, "I finally found a guy I like, and you ruined my date." After a while, Luke replied, What did mean?" I was a little angry. "You ruined my date, and all you can say is, You should at least apologize." Luke interrupted me. He looked at me calmly and said, "I can make it up to you with a date." I was stunned. Because Luke's tone at that moment was too serious, too similar to how he usually spoke when supervising my studies. I couldn't quite understand what he meant. After I came back to my senses, I half-jokingly broke the awkward silence. "Make it up to me with a date? Dates involve holding hands and kissing, you know. Can you do that?" Luke's breathing hitched slightly. His fingers on the textbook tightened imperceptibly. And then he said in an almost inaudible voice, The smile on my face froze. "No, Luke. Don't you only care about studying and not dating?" Luke averted his gaze from mine. I continued to ask. "So, are you joking or serious when you say these things?" Luke pursed his lips slightly. I was silent for a moment, then took a deep breath and said, "Can you say anything else besides that word? At least say something I can understand, like a normal person." Luke looked up at me for a long time. His light-colored pupils were like pure amber, and when he suddenly leaned in so close, it momentarily distracted me. Luke lightly touched the corner of my lips, his eyelashes brushing against the side of my face. He told me, "As long as it's you, I can do anything. Whether it's kissing, holding hands, or hugging, I can do it, and I'd be more than happy to." I returned to my dorm room with incredibly mixed feelings. After Kristen interrogated me and I spilled everything, her expression was even more complicated than mine. She fell silent. Then, in utter disbelief, her voice trembling, she said, "You're telling me Luke kissed you? That bookworm who's only ever studied his whole life actually initiated a kiss? Holy crap! Kristen pointed at me, her face full of anguish, and said, "I knew you two were hiding something from me. And sure enough, you kept it from me until you were practically dating before telling me." I interrupted Kristen, a little speechless. "Wait, don't talk nonsense. We're not dating." Kristen suddenly seemed to remember something. "Oh, right. You said you don't like Luke's type. So, Luke's first time falling in love was unrequited? Wait, he hasn't liked you since childhood, has he?" I shook my head, thinking it was impossible. Ignoring the gossiping, Kristen, I thought for a moment and decided to apologize to Luke for what happened earlier. After all, if I had known beforehand that Luke had different feelings for me, I definitely wouldn't have done those things to make him misunderstand, just to get back at Jessica. Then I sent Luke a long string of messages rejecting him. Basically, I said that our personalities weren't compatible, and I preferred someone like Jason, who was both wild and well-behaved, giving a sense of novelty that made you want to explore. As for Luke, he seemed like someone you could see right through. Apart from his strikingly handsome looks, everything else was just too boring. Luke didn't reply to my message until the evening. His reply was another, I suspected that word was the only thing in his head. Since that day, the relationship between Luke and me instantly dropped to an even colder freezing point than before. We didn't contact each other much to begin with, and now that Luke wasn't looking for me, I wouldn't actively seek him out either. Jessica and Tony, who were initially chatting enthusiastically every night, have recently become strangely quiet, with Jessica pulling her curtains and nestling in her bed every evening. Jessica spoke to me when she had just finished showering, casually asking, "You're probably not going to the club gathering tomorrow, right?" I had almost forgotten about it until she mentioned it. At the beginning of the semester, Kristen dragged me into a photography club. I didn't pay much attention at first, but later I accidentally glanced at the club's main group chat and found that Jessica and Luke were also in it. The atmosphere in the club was quite good, with a regular monthly dinner gathering. This month was no exception, scheduled for tomorrow, but I've never been very interested in such activities, especially since I had plans to go shopping with Kristen tomorrow. Jessica saw that I ignored her and seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as if she had expected it. "I knew you usually wouldn't participate in this kind of activity." I found it a bit strange why Jessica suddenly cared so much whether I attended a club event. Opening the club group chat, I saw 99+ messages and then realized that Luke, who usually loved to spend time in the lab and library, was surprisingly attending tomorrow's club event. Luke has always been popular at school because of his looks. Many junior members in the club joined because of Luke. I originally wasn't planning to go. After all, my relationship with Luke is a bit awkward right now. But as soon as I thought of Jessica, I couldn't help but clench my fists. This person hasn't even apologized to me and my best friend yet, and just a few days ago, she was still video calling Tony every night with the volume turned up. It would be strange if I let her off easy. I walked to the location of the club dinner. I struggled for a moment before pushing open the door. As soon as I looked up, my eyes met Luke's in the middle of the crowd. His gaze only lingered on my face for half a second before shifting to the boy walking beside me. I inexplicably felt a little guilty and looked away. Yesterday, I was torn about whether to attend the club dinner because of Luke and Jessica. Kristen, who is quite a gossip, enthusiastically offered me a suggestion. She said to me in a seasoned tone, "Based on my dating experience, just find a male friend to go with you. It can both deter Luke's interest in you and make Jessica uncomfortable." Given that Kristen has dated more people than I've spit out watermelon seeds, I firmly believed her advice. But at this moment, I started to subtly feel that Kristen was unreliable. Mainly, Luke's gaze was too direct and undisguised. He just stared straight at me and Carlos, who was walking beside me, making Carlos a bit depressed. Carlos turned to me and asked, "No, do you owe him money?" "Kristen didn't tell me you two had a legal dispute." I rolled my eyes at him. This guy is indeed as abnormal as Kristen. Since I don't have many male friends, Carlos, who was walking beside me, was called by Kristen this morning with a frantic phone call to help out. Carlos is the son of Kristen's father's client. He and Kristen are the same type of people, the kind who flirt with many but never get serious. When they first met at a dinner party, they both felt they were each other's ideal type. Then, one pretended to be a pure young man, and the other, a gentle little white rabbit, playing games for half a year until they ran into each other at the same bar. At that time, Kristen was wearing a mink coat and playing dice with someone, while Carlos was lazily lounging in a booth, drinking with someone. Their eyes met across the room, and they stared at each other in silence for a long time. Then they became friends, the kind who are birds of a feather. Carlos was wearing a floral shirt today, with sunglasses on his face, walking lazily, practically screaming, "I'm a scumbag," with his whole demeanor. Under Luke's gaze, I felt a bit uncomfortable and turned to go to the restroom first. As soon as I came out, I accidentally bumped into someone. I thought it was Carlos, who might have been waiting impatiently outside, but when I looked up, I saw it was Luke. I was startled, and because I was distracted, I didn't pull away when he grabbed my wrist. He took my hand and guided it to the corner of his lips. I felt a bit offended and angry, but before I could flare up, I felt something that seemed to be made of metal. My nerves suddenly jumped. The sensation was like a lip ring. Then Luke suddenly opened his mouth slightly towards me, revealing a freshly pierced silver tongue ring. A silver tongue ring was embedded in the center of his clean tongue, beautiful and striking. Luke lowered his eyelashes, obscuring his amber-colored, cool-toned pupils. His voice was a bit muffled as he said, "Jennifer, you see, I'm not that boring, am I?" My breath caught, and for a moment I thought I was hallucinating. Luke, who usually had strict boundaries and rigid rules, had gotten lip and tongue piercings. I let Luke hold my wrist, even unconsciously touching the lip piercing. Luke seemed to think I liked these things. He leaned down slightly, lowering his head so I could touch it more easily. "I'm not afraid of pain. You can touch it harder." I stared blankly at Luke. He still had that indifferent look, but in his light-colored pupils, looking down at me, there seemed to be a nearly obsessive emotion hidden. My heart inexplicably skipped a beat, and then I heard Luke say in a low voice, "They're not good enough for you, Jennifer. They don't deserve to stand by your side." I don't know if getting tongue and lip piercings really hurts, but I knew that when I pulled my hand back a bit too forcefully just now, I accidentally scraped the lip piercing hard, and then I saw Luke subtly frown. But the pained expression only flashed across his face for a moment, quickly returning to its usual calm and unruffled state. Having grown up with Luke since childhood, I knew Luke's personality was always one to endure. One day in high school, he came to class with a high fever. At lunchtime, I casually mentioned to Kristen that I wanted to eat the popular roast chicken from the shop outside the school gate, and that afternoon, Luke rang my doorbell. He was holding a roasted chicken he had waited 2 hours in line for, half his clothes soaked from the heavy rain that day, and his handsome, aloof face was flushed with fever and sweat. My mother and I were instantly startled when we opened the door. Luke calmly handed me the still warm roasted chicken, his voice thick with a stuffy nose. "Here." My mother quickly pulled him inside, taking his temperature and rushing him to the hospital, afraid he might have damaged his brain over a roasted chicken. Luke, however, casually replied, "I'm fine, Auntie." Afterward, my conscience was so troubled during that period that I listened to Luke intently. Not only did I study diligently for a while, but I also broke up with my boyfriend, whom I had only recently started dating. Now, looking at the lip and tongue piercings Luke got because of my comment that I found him boring, my conscience began to prickle again. I looked at the wound on his side, which was slightly bleeding from where I had scratched it, and asked him with a pained voice, "Does it hurt?" Luke subconsciously shook his head and replied, "No, it doesn't." I frowned at him. "Tell me the truth. Luke's eyelashes fluttered quickly twice, and then he paused for 2 seconds, his voice a little low. A little. It hurts, he quickly added. But you can touch it however you want. Don't worry about me. I can bear it. My heart was struck hard again. I couldn't tell if it was out of guilt or something else, but I leaned in to check his bleeding wound. Fortunately, it was just a slight seepage of blood, not serious. Luke, above me, just watched me quietly, not moving. Carlos, who had been waiting for a long time on the other side, walked over, grumbling. Seriously, I've been waiting for you two over there for so long. And you two are here being all lovey-dovey. Since you two are so close, why did you have Kristen call me over so early in the morning? I found him a bit noisy, so I glared at him. Quiet. Luke raised an eyebrow at Carlos, his gaze cold. Carlos, fuming, turned and walked away. When I got back to the dorm, Kristen had deliberately stayed in, sitting on my bed, eagerly waiting for gossip. She asked me, "Well, did my advice work? What happened with you three today? Tell me, tell me." I opened my mouth, about to say something, but then other thoughts suddenly came to mind, and I fell silent for a moment. Jessica had indeed attended the club dinner today. For the first time, she wore a dress and was very carefully dressed. Usually, she always liked to wear jerseys and always scoffed at girlish things like dresses. When she saw me at dinner, she first froze for a moment, then directly bypassed me and greeted Luke, who had come back with me. "Hello, Brother Luke." Several boys from the club, who were all on good terms with Jessica, knew she liked Luke and were all egging her on. Jessica had originally wanted to sit directly next to Luke, acting familiar as she usually did with other boys. But since Luke had actively sat next to me, she had no choice but to sit directly opposite Luke. During dinner, I finally understood why Jessica suddenly wore a dress today. She seemed to think Luke was susceptible to being flirted with and wanted to imitate how I had flirted with Luke last time, extending her foot under the table to hook Luke's leg. Luke glanced indifferently at Jessica. Then, as if seeking help, he gently touched the back of my hand. I was already feeling guilty about Luke getting a lip piercing, so seeing this, I immediately spread my legs to block Jessica's extended foot. Jessica looked at me with displeasure, and I provocatively looked back at her. Jessica and I went back and forth, making the movements under the dining table seem like a fight. The boy from the club looked at the table with a puzzled expression, somewhat strangely asking, "Was there an earthquake? Why is the table shaking so violently?" Luke lightly coughed, imperceptibly curling one corner of his mouth before quickly suppressing it, returning to his usual cold and unruffled demeanor. Lifting my head from under the table, I then realized that Luke and I had been hand in hand and leg to leg since just now. The burning sensation of our skin touching was like an electric current delayed by half a minute, suddenly piercing my mind, startling me into quickly withdrawing my hand. To be honest, although I've never lacked potential partners, unlike Kristen, I'm too much of a feelings person, so my standards have always been too high. This has led to me only having a few crushes, and my last relationship was that early romance in high school. The intimate contact with Luke these past few days has been practically unprecedented. Kristen, waiting in bed for me to share gossip, saw that I hadn't spoken for a long time and impatiently shook my shoulder. "What are you spacing out about? I'm waiting for you. Hurry up and tell me. Did Luke's heart break when he saw you walking with Carlos? And did he completely give up on you? I told you. My advice is absolutely effective. And Jessica?" I silently interrupted Kristen. "I don't know if it worked, but Luke got a lip piercing." Kristen was stunned. "Huh?" I thought for a moment and added, "Jessica probably overheard our last conversation, and then she somehow told Luke that I said he was boring." Kristen felt her worldview crumbling. "Huh?" I told her. "Luke got a lip piercing because of me." Kristen paused, then asked me, "So?" I continued. "He also got a tongue piercing. And it actually looks pretty good." Kristen fell silent. "And then?" After a while, she asked me, Images of Luke leaning close to me suddenly flashed through my mind, and that strange, unsettling feeling started to well up in my chest again, leaving my mind blank for a moment, unable to think of anything to say. All right, I get it. Kristen's tone became serious. When are you and Luke planning to start dating behind my back? I instinctively wanted to deny it, but the words stopped short on my tongue. Kristen immediately saw through it. She sighed softly. You and Luke, well, you two are a good match, so just date. I tried to explain. No, you misunderstood. It's because of guilt, you know? I feel like denying these things now is unnecessary. Oh well, after all. My mind was a mess, my explanation completely illogical, and Kristen looked at me with an expression of utter disbelief. Forget it. I gave up, feeling it was impossible to explain to Kristen. You wouldn't understand. Kristen nodded. Yes, I don't understand. You've always been so awkward since you were little. If you like someone, just date them. Being so coy, I really don't understand. I was inexplicably a little angry at what she said, and threw the pillow from the bed at her face. These past few days, I keep running into Luke. Either in the cafeteria, or in the same academic building, or on the street. When we meet, I usually just give a slightly aloof nod. Luke, on the other hand, would give me a subtle smile. Kristen was already numb to it. She thought it was a little game between Luke and me. The fact that Luke got a lip piercing caused quite a stir in the club and class groups. Since many people were shocked, someone would occasionally gossip and ask Luke why he suddenly got a lip piercing. Luke specifically messaged me about it, asking if I had time to go out with him to clear his head. I asked him what was wrong. He replied, "Nothing, just a little annoyed." Then he booked 2 movie tickets and asked me to go to the movies with him. I told Kristen in advance, in case she asked me to go shopping on the weekend and I wasn't free. After I finished telling her, Kristen rolled her eyes, looking a little speechless. Clearing your head by going to a horror movie with 2 people? Are you two really stupid? Or just pretending to be innocent? I replied, I won't tell you, you wouldn't understand. Kristen humored me. All right. You're just going with him to the movies out of guilt, right? I didn't want to deal with her. When the movie started, we ordered 1 popcorn. I don't know what I was thinking. We could have ordered 2, but I just ordered 1 and put it in the middle of the chair. The horror movie seemed boring. There were no bloody scenes, no thrilling parts, and just as I was getting sleepy, a head suddenly leaned on my shoulder. Luke gently rested his head on my shoulder and said, I'm a little scared. Luke smelled clean and pleasant. He then touched the back of my hand. Can I hold your hand? I only hesitated for a moment before nodding. Luke chuckled softly, and then I felt a coolness on my wrist as he took my hand. I looked down in surprise and saw a bracelet. It was a custom design from my favorite niche brand. My initials were engraved on the bead in the middle of the bracelet, and Luke's initials were on the back of the bead. Although it's not as good as the gifts I've given you before, I bought this chain with the first money I ever earned myself. Luke looked down at the bracelet, lost in thought. But if you don't like it, it's okay to throw it away. You don't have to give it back to me. I'll give you something better next time. I suddenly felt that Luke's tone sounded a little pitiful when he said that. Perhaps it was guilt, but I felt a part of my heart was like a soft ball of cotton, making me easily soft-hearted. Otherwise, why would I have accepted this bracelet, which clearly showed Luke's feelings, instead of refusing it? Even after the movie ended, when Luke confessed to me, he looked straight at me with those cold amber eyes, his eyelashes trembling slightly, and said, I've been a bit troubled lately. Please don't reject me, okay? And then I nodded and agreed. I just agreed. I told Kristen about Luke and me right away. I explained to her, listen to me, because I thought about it a while ago, and I realized that I've never really treated Luke very well since we were kids, but he's always been so good to me. And this time he went to such lengths. So I felt a little guilty towards him, and then Kristen humored me. All right. You agreed to be with him because you felt guilty towards Luke, right? I really don't understand your awkward personality. You want to be in a relationship, but you have to make up an excuse for yourself. I decided it was best not to chat with Kristen for a while. The night Luke publicly posted on his moments, Jessica didn't return to the dorm. Kristen and I contacted the counselor and found out that Jessica had gone to a bar with someone else, intending to drown her sorrows like others. Actually, I've never really understood Jessica. If you say she's promiscuous, her true love has always been Luke. But if you say she's devoted, she also likes to flirt with other men. The next morning, when we saw Jessica, she reeked of alcohol, and her eyes were red from crying. Later, I learned from Kristen that Jessica went drinking not because of Luke, but because someone had posted about her on the school's confession wall. The person was apparently the girlfriend of a good friend of Kristen's on the sports team, and she cursed Jessica on the confession wall, calling her a green tea bitch who liked to be a mistress and other nasty things. The incident caused quite a stir, and more than half the school was talking about her. Tony was never a good person to begin with. Because of this incident, he broke up with Jessica. Jessica and Tony had already slept together, but Tony had never spent a single penny on Jessica. He was incredibly stingy. I didn't feel sorry for Jessica. She deserved what she got for her wrongdoings. It was just that Kristen and I, being roommates, didn't bother to dwell on it too much, and only did some minor things to make her uncomfortable. But seeing that she had no tissues on her desk, I still threw a pack to her. She glanced at me, her eyes reddening even more, though I didn't know what she was thinking. For a while, Jessica didn't attend classes, and only returned to the dorm very late at night. It wasn't until just before winter break that a brand new Gucci bag suddenly appeared on my desk. Underneath it was a neatly written note with the two words, "I'm sorry." Kristen also had a note and a package on her desk. I was a bit surprised. Then a thought struck me and I understood. Jessica had probably been working part-time during this period and used her own money to buy me a bag as a way to make amends. I don't really understand why some people only realize that what they are doing is wrong after they have been punished, but in any case, although Jessica and I can no longer be friends, everyone makes mistakes, and everyone has a chance to turn over a new leaf. I accepted the bag and responded with a smiley face on the note. This can be considered as settling the score between us. As for Kristen, she will certainly have her own judgment. Luke invited me to lunch. I casually mentioned Jessica to him. He frowned, somewhat puzzled, and asked, "Jessica? Who's that?" I paused for a moment. Then I told him she was the girl who liked him and had eaten with us before. Luke thought for a moment and said casually, "I have some impression. I think I heard you mention her, but I don't remember her name. Jay." I felt a little emotional. So Jessica did so much, but the boy she liked didn't even remember her name. As I was thinking, Luke suddenly looked at me and said, "Are you with me because of guilt?" I had just swallowed a mouthful of rice and almost choked when I heard that. It must have been Kristen, that big mouth. She loves to gossip about Luke and me every day, and she probably accidentally let it slip when she went to ask Luke about our situation. I thought about it, and just as I was about to explain, I heard Luke laugh and say, "It's okay to be with me because of guilt." I looked at him in surprise. "Are you that accepting?" Luke leaned down and kissed me. The lip ring brushed against my chin, cool and a little strange. He kissed me again. This time it was a bit forceful. I didn't feel much pain, just a little breathless. But Luke was different. His lowered eyelashes trembled violently, and he looked at me with obvious discomfort, probably from the lip ring digging in. I smiled at him, and after a moment, I suddenly remembered the unfinished conversation from earlier, and felt I needed to explain. I'm a Leo, you know. I'm not the type to force myself to be with someone I don't like just because I'm touched. So you don't have to worry that I'm with you out of guilt. As for what I said to Kristen, that's a different matter, after all. I paused, then added, We Leos are quite concerned with appearances. I simply didn't want to admit to Kristen that I liked you. You know? It just felt like it would be a bit embarrassing to say it, especially since I had said it was impossible for me to like you just a while ago. Luke nodded, indicating he understood. Then he suddenly said, "Then I'll confess something to you too." I looked at him, puzzled. He leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Actually, I did it on purpose." I was a bit bewildered, not quite understanding what he meant. But no matter how much I pressed Luke afterward, he just smiled and let me fuss, not answering another word. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. I woke Kristen up, and we pondered over what Luke had said. After a moment, Kristen suddenly looked at me with a flash of realization. Holy cow! Luke is a truly hidden master. I asked Kristen to explain, but she refused to tell me, just rolled her eyes and said, "You two just have to flaunt your affection in front of me every day, don't you?" "I need my beauty sleep. I have a date with my brother tomorrow." I was very frustrated. It wasn't until many years later, when we were already preparing for our engagement, that I found the answer. While packing items to move into our new home, I found it in a locked diary in Luke's suitcase. The 21st of September, 2017. Sunny, I know she's easily soft-hearted. Today, when I brought her lunch, I told her I accidentally sprained my ankle. She believed me. She was very worried, but I was lying to her. The 11th of October, 2017, Sunny. Today she's dating another guy. I'm a bit annoyed. The 25th of November, 2017, Sunny. Today she went to the arcade with another guy. I skipped class and waited for her outside all night. She really did soften up. She couldn't even get into the game and secretly watched me through the glass. The 13th of December, 2017. Cloudy. I had a fever today, and I deliberately stood in line in the rain to get her roasted chicken. She softened up again. I asked if she could break up with her boyfriend, and seeing how upset I was, she quickly agreed. So, I was the easily fooled clown all along. I was furious. I yelled at Kristen, who was trying on a bridesmaid dress, and Luke, who was cooking nearby. "You two, get over here!" The fragrant aroma of food was accompanied by Kristen's impatient voice. "What are you yelling about? I rushed all the way from the company to try on these crappy clothes." "How many meetings did I push back for you, Jennifer? Do you have any conscience?" Luke, meanwhile, pushed open the kitchen door. He stood not far away, smiling faintly as he looked at me. In that instant, I suddenly understood. How could someone as intelligent as Luke not be clever? Whether it was those past events or the fact that I could accidentally find his diary now, everything was part of his plan. So, all the coincidences were not destined by heaven, but deliberately orchestrated by someone. But I, being someone who has always been petty, insisted on holding a grudge against Luke at this moment. I raised an eyebrow at him, feigning annoyance in my tone. "Explain yourself?" Luke walked towards me. He shimmered in the sunlight, his lowered eyelashes seemingly gilded, and with just a slight flutter, they made his cool and handsome face appear especially endearing. It was only now that I realized he was actually deliberately playing pitiful in front of me. He brushed my cheek with his finger. "Don't be angry. Give me a kiss and consider it letting off steam." Me, Kristen, who had just opened the door and walked out, happened to see us being affectionate and slammed the door shut again with a bang. Her grumbling voice came from behind the door. "Are you two ever going to be done? I can't take it anymore. I'm going to call Carlos to suffer with me." That evening, the three of us, plus Carlos, whom we'd called over, were playing poker on blankets in the living room. Suddenly, Kristen handed me her phone. "Hey, Jennifer, take a look." The phone displayed a Moments page. It was a photo Jessica had posted. In the picture, she was wearing a basketball uniform, teaching a few children how to play basketball. The caption read, "Every happy moment at work." Ever since she was exposed on the confession wall, she had been cyberbullied for a long time, and her personality had become melancholic. After graduation, I didn't know where she went until I saw her. Moments now and realized she had returned to her hometown to become an elementary school physical education teacher. Unlike her short hair in college, in the photo, she had grown out her hair and was wearing a long dress, looking much gentler. The mistakes made in youth due to vanity and rebellion will eventually settle in the river of time. Even though we were never friends, I still wish her well, and I wish everyone who battles through challenges on their journey of growth that their future will always be brilliant and beautiful.